In this video, we answer the question, well, what do we even mean by happiness? And we're going to draw on the work of Daniel Kahneman. This is part of a tribute series I'm doing to Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winning psychologist and economist who unfortunately passed away this month. But I think you'll find this video very interesting because we're going to actually dive a little bit deep into this question of like, well, what are we even talking about here when we talk about happiness? So we begin with kind of a distinction here, and this is all based again on the work of Daniel Kahneman, and I'll include down below some references there. But he says, there's this interesting phenomenon when we think about our perception, right? Because a large part of happiness is our perception of an event. It's like you go do something for a few hours and then you kind of think back like that was good or that was bad or that was boring or that was whatever. But interestingly, there's kind of a disconnect between the actual moment-to-moment experience of happiness or unhappiness and then our perception or our memory of the experiences. And Kahneman points out a couple studies, right? The first, they asked people to basically hold their hand in ice cold water for a minute. And so that's one group. The second group is asked to hold their hand in ice cold water for a minute and 30 seconds. But in the last 30 seconds, they increase the temperature of the water by a few degrees so it's a little more comfortable. Now, interestingly, people in the second group actually reported less suffering or that it was a less unpleasant experience. In other words, even though they suffered for an extra 30 seconds, they had 30 seconds more unhappiness, they remembered or perceived the experience as better than the group that suffered 30 seconds less. So now this opens up some really interesting, even ethical discussions around another study they did is they had people get a colonoscopy, which I won't go into the details of how those work, but I would assume you know what it is. If not, I was going to say Google it, but careful with that. But it's a very uncomfortable procedure that older men typically get that involves a scope being put inside of someone. And so they had this experiment where one group just got a normal colonoscopy. The second group, the scoping device was left inside the rear end of the person for an extra 3 minutes. But in those 3 minutes, they didn't move it at all. So that while it's kind of uncomfortable, it wasn't necessarily painful. And then similar finding. The second group, even though they had 3 more minutes of pain and discomfort somewhat, because the ending of it was less painful, they remembered the whole thing as better off. And so what we're starting to get at here is there's almost these two sorts of happiness for our two different selves. And that is part of what Kahneman's research and thinking talked a lot about. So we can think about experiencing self, which is really about being around people we like and doing activities we enjoy in the moment-to-moment neurophysiological sensation of happiness. And Kahneman offered a couple ways of assessing that I think are useful. One is called the DRM, which is the daily reconstruction method. So basically he says you can measure how happy you are by thinking back over the course of your day in sort of series, right? And you can divide those up however makes sense for you. It could be getting ready for work, morning of work, afternoon of work, home in the evening, whatever. And then you basically reconstruct your day and assess in each of those chapters basically how you were feeling. Was it good, bad, neutral, etc. You can also do what he calls the U index, which is basically just asking you to think about how much time you spend in a negative state. So looking back over your day today, how many times were you feeling kind of just not good? And he says that those two measures are kind of one way of thinking about happiness because they're all about the moment-to-moment experience of throughout the course of a day, this is what I was feeling and this is what I was experiencing. Now, on the other side, you have kind of a life evaluation style. A common method for this is a Cantrell ladder, which is saying, imagine a ladder with, let's say, 10 rungs on it from 1 to 10. Where would you step back and place your life on that, right? Or they often use language like stepping back and considering your life as a whole. How happy are you? And so what you have to understand is these are two different modes. As Kahneman himself says, you can be happy in your life and you can be happy with your life. And you can imagine how those are two slightly different things. I could be happy with my life as a whole because I'm very successful and think everything is great. But in my life, a lot of the time I'm very tensed and stressed out. Conversely, if maybe you are, even struggling with alcoholism or some sort of addiction, you may not be happy with your life because you're facing a lot of challenges and maybe there's family issues, there's job issues. But when you think about being happy in your life, maybe in that given moment when you first have that drink or you have that drug or that whatever, in that moment you are happy. And so it's not that they're always total opposites, but they are different things, and there are different kind of measurement approaches in the field of psychology, in the field of happiness studies, etc., that you can use to get to both of them. But what I would advocate is that we want to think about both. Okay, so on one hand, we want to be thinking about, when you're thinking about happiness, how happy am I in my life? What is my kind of that DRM, daily reconstruction method? How happy am I with my day today? How did I spend my time? How often in the course of a day or a week am I experiencing negative emotions? And then optimizing for that dimension of happiness, again, through prioritizing activities that bring us a sense of joy or engagement or interest, and spending time with people that we enjoy being around. And then on the flip side, life satisfaction, which comes more from goal achievement and measures of kind of status. And so saying, hey, I'm going to set this goal and I'm going to achieve it, or I want to get that promotion, or I want to, do this thing that's going to make me feel better about myself. I don't want to discount those things either. I think those are necessary ingredients to happiness, because again, at the end of the day, it's really about being happy in life, those moment-to-moment experiences, as well as with life, which means kind of achieving things or having a perspective that when we step back and look at our life as a whole, we can be deeply satisfied with it. So I hope that this kind of dual model of happiness, drawing on the work of Daniel Kahneman, is interesting and helpful to you. Here's a video based on this one that I think you'll like. And as always, on this channel, you can find science-based tools for happiness to help you be at your best in work and in life. So that's all for now. This has been your happiness nerd, Jackson Kirchis. Thanks for watching.